I introduced you to this guy recently, this poet, Christian Book, who's a Canadian poet.
I need to get the book. It's next door. Wait, you tell them. I'll run and get the book.
Oh yeah, go. So Christian Book is a special type of poet. He's experimental poet. So he's not concerned with the content of what he's writing. He just wants to kind of play and muck about with form and how words go together. So he wrote this whole book. It was called Eunoia, and Eunoia is essentially it's just 5 sections, and each section, every single word in that section is written with only words that contain A, and then the next one is E, and the next one is I, and the next one is O, and then U. And so he coined it this word because it's the shortest word that he'd come up with that had all 5 vowels in it. And he wanted to explore what was the personality of E, personality of O, of I, of A. And you've got that book there, Matthew?
Actually, I left it down at my flat in London.
Oh, don't worry about it.
So, but
okay.
Go on, you keep talking about it. It's so cool.
He's so cool. So in the book, like you just kind of discover he doesn't really care so much, even if the poems fully make sense. What he's concerned about is sound and the personality of the words themselves. And his latest experiment in poetry is what he calls the xenotext. And essentially, he wanted to make a poem that would live in the cell of a bacterium. And it's kind of pretty crazy and pretty cool. We're going to just sort of go into it. Essentially, what he did was he realized, like, if I'm going to do that, I need to kind of write a poem and code it with DNA. So maybe, yeah, let's go straight to the poem.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I just got a question. What does eunoia mean? I don't know. I couldn't Google that very quickly, but I think I remember it means like good sound. EU means good in Greek.
Google it. I want to know as well. But it feels right. Like that. You should read some of the samples of the poems. Like, it's amazing the different character that they have. Like the O's are obviously like very kind of soothing and calming, and then I think it's the E's that feel like the rhymes are really easy, and they're really easy to like to begin with. But then as time goes on and you're reading more of them, they start to feel a little bit like. Is it E that happens with, or is it I? I can't remember.
I found I oddly aggressive.
Maybe it's that one. Yeah.
Yeah. It means a well mind or beautiful thinking. And the way that Christian Book decided that he would write his poem is it took him 4 years to write this poem. He wrote a poem, and each of the letters in the alphabet had to correspond with another letter. I don't fully know the science of this, but the first poem, I'm just going to read to you guys now. Any style of life is prim. Oh, stay my lyre. With wily ploys, moan the riff of any tune aloud. Moan now my fate, in fate we rely. My myth now is the word of life. So that was his poem that he wrote. And his poem that he wrote, he wanted to put that into DNA, but it wasn't just that part of the poem that he wanted. He wanted to store a poem in DNA, but he also wanted the bacterium to respond to that poem. So in order to do that, I don't know the science behind this. Matthew, you're drawing some squiggles on the screen. Perhaps you can help explain that.
Okay, so I was first going to talk about the kind of call and response. So some of you will have already studied this bit of genetics, and some of you will be yet to do this. So I'll just do a really quick summary of how DNA works. So DNA are the 2 strands that are inside the nuclei of all of our cells. So every single one of our cells contains all of the information to make the whole of us, and more information, loads of information that isn't even used. So think of every single cell in the body as containing a huge library, an enormous library of information. And now the library is all sorted into these like corridors that are essentially the strands of DNA. And every single strand has a strand that goes with it, a pairing strand. And so we're not going to get into too much... Matt's drawings at ASMR for the eyes. Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, we're not going to go too much into like what these strands are made of. But what I want to show you is that every strand is joined together by these things called bases. And the bases come as... there are 4 options. So if you think about... coding on a computer, computers are all coded in binary. Like the entire of everything you're seeing on a screen now, everything that you're receiving in terms of audio, all of it, it's all just a series of ones and zeros arriving down the internet and into your house and into your phone or computer or whatever you're watching on. It's all just 1100111100, like an incredibly rapid speed of ones and zeros flying past. Whereas human DNA doesn't use 2 things, it doesn't use 1 and 0, it uses 4. So it uses C is one of them, and G is another one. And then it also uses A, and it uses T. And the key idea is that these go in a pair. And I like to remember that the C and G go together because they're kind of curvy, and the A and T go together because they're kind of aggressive, spiky shapes. And that's how I've always remembered it. Anyway, so if you have a C here, and if you have a C here, for example, and if you've got another couple of C's down here, then those will all be paired up with a G. So every C pairs up with an opposite G, and every C pairs up with an opposite G, and then that's going to be the same here. Opposite those ones are these ones. So basically, DNA strands are normally zipped together, but this bit I've just unzipped so that I can show you what's inside. And then also you'll have, anywhere where you've got an A, it will pair up with a T, and so on. And let's finish filling those in. So DNA all works symmetrically. Ooh, I missed one of those there. That one should be a dark blue. Yeah, DNA all works symmetrically. So every time you have a C on one side, you'll get a G on the other side. An A on one side, you'll get T on the other side. So what Christian has done, this poet, is he's taken, I think he's taken a sequence of 3. So he's taken a sequence of 3, and he's decided that that is one letter. So if he decides that this is the letter A, then opposite it, this is what he is using to code for the letter T. So on one side he's using the alphabet, and on the other side he's using the xenocode. So he writes a poem down one side of the DNA strand using his alphabet and using the CGAT combination that he's decided for each letter. So for this one we decided that A was going to be CAG. That's the code that he's used. And then he's made sure that every single letter corresponds to another letter such that his poem has a symmetrical poem on the other side. So that's just one level of it, which is like baffling enough and completely genius. And no wonder it took him like years to work out how to do this. But the other thing is, the actual gene that he's created, so the gene is just the sequence of bases. The gene that he's created is not just a poem encoded. The gene actually makes proteins inside the bacteria.